All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Combat Booster Red Bottoms business presentation. We have this every month, and this is where we have guest speakers, whether it's one of our VIP members, our preferred partners, or a guest to come in and talk about a topic that interests you. Tonight, we are going to be talking about self-publishing, and our guest speaker is Donna Hoffmeyer, and she is not only a Combat Booster Red Bottoms VIP member, but she's also the founder of R.E.B.el LLC. That's R.E.B. for R.E.B.el LLC.com, R.E.B.el LLC. And she is a Texas transplant, originally from the small, quaint town of Colebrook in North New Hampshire. That sounds cold to me. So just saying it. Also, Donna is a 21-year Air Force, retired Air Force nurse, and she retired and transitioned out of the military during a very challenging time, and that was during COVID in 2020, the year 2020. And Donna is currently an author, blogger, business owner, podcaster, and most importantly, she is a mom to two beautiful children, Brady and Bianca, and a wife coming up on 17 years next month and he's her rock. His name is Brian. So Donna, we want to thank you for joining us today. And I'm going to turn it over to you because I'm pretty sure that everyone is attending has some questions that they're going to want you to answer. So thank you for coming, Donna, and it's all you.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. So hi, everybody. So yeah, I kind of sound like probably like a little bit of a melting pot of a person because I am a nurse by trade. I've been a nurse for 30 years. And I did 21 years in the military as a nurse. And when I transitioned out, I ended up taking a whole different path. And while I was in, that's what started my transition to an entirely different path. And so right here, you'll see if it changes. There it goes. So I've published 2 books. The first book, Warrior Patriot Citizen, was my first book I did in 2017. Was a complete happenstance. Somebody engaged me and within 2 hours convinced me that I should write a book with them. I had never and still have never met them face to face. And so I said, sure, why not? Isn't that what everybody does? And I learned a tremendous amount on how to publish a book, more than I thought I would learn. And it was quite the adventure. It was very stressful. There was a lot of ups and downs in it, but the bottom line was I got it to the finish line. And after I went through all of that, I must have realized that's when I liked writing, because I'm not sure anybody could have been through all that, plus a husband deploying, plus 2 toddlers, and writing a book at the same time. There had to have been something there about writing. So I went back in 2020 and I decided to give it another go, not intentionally. My second book, as you can see the name of it, Pandemic Parodies, started because on March 16th, I came back from spring break with my family. I went into work. I was still in the military. I was making the comment like, I don't really feel so good. I'm a little run down. And the doc I was working with said, hey, just go home and we'll see you tomorrow or the next day. I said, good deal. What I didn't know was that it was the last day I would ever wear the uniform. On March 17th, which happened to have been my birthday, Randolph shut down. And then I'm sitting there looking at my children and my husband all sitting at the table. And I was like, oh man, now what? So my stress relief was to actually start writing little funny quips on Facebook. I would just write these stories and I was just being funny. I really had no other intention on it, but it relieved my stress and my friends kind of started laughing at them. And I actually did that for 86 straight days. And at the end of that, I was like, I've got to retire. And I'm trying to retire during COVID. So you can imagine what that looked like. We didn't know what we were doing. And then my friends started to come near me, IM me or text me, and they were like, "Hey, are you writing any more of those stories?" I'm like, "I can't. I'm so tired. I've got to get my work done. I got to get this done." And they're like, you should write a story. You should write another book. And I was like, "Oh Lord," I'm like, nobody wants to hear about that. And they kept egging me on. And so I went to my editor and I said, "Hey, I know I did this 3, 4 years ago. What do you think?" And he's like, "Do it. I think it would be funny." So the Pandemic Parodies was born, and my daughter actually wrote pictures in there during that time. So it's a very near and dear book. It's a nonfiction, it's a journal, it's humor. And ironically, little did I know, it actually turned out to be therapeutic for some people. I actually had a friend of mine who's a therapist say, "This book is going to help a lot of people." And I was like, "To what? Learn how to become sassy?" I was like, "Because it's really just a smart ass book." And he goes, "No, Donna, it's going to help people." Well, I ate a couple words when about, I don't know, maybe a year later or so, I was home visiting my parents. A friend of mine who owned a relatively large business, she was at the house with her husband and her baby. And her husband says, "Hey, tell Donna what happened when you started reading her book." And she looked at me and she's like, "I started to cry." And her husband's like, "No, no, no." She like blubbered for an hour. And I was like, "Why?" And she said, "Because I was so busy taking care of everything and everybody else, I didn't have time to process my emotions. And when I read your book, it brought it all back." She goes, "It was," her quote, "the best therapy session I ever had." So that was quite surprising to me. So in all of that, somewhere an editor found my book, my second book, downloaded it, and said, "Your book is really awesome. I'd like to talk to you." So I talked with her and I mentioned to her one of the problems in the world of self-publishing is that there's very little education, if any. There's a lot of people that are limping through, helping each other out. And then there's a lot of other scam artists taking advantage of people that have no knowledge. And she's like, "You're right." And I said, "If I was going to do it, this is what I would do." And she went, "I want to help you do this." And so within a matter of about 2 months, we had an entire team. And my DBA to R.E.B.el LLC is called Publishing Pathfinders. So that's how, and you'll see at the bottom of the screen, there's two logos. You'll see R.E.B.el LLC, and then you'll see Publishing Pathfinders, my DBA. So that's kind of a little background on how I got to where I am. And so let's move this way. What I want to talk about today, oh, it is going to move. Good. I want to talk about self-publishing, but I want to back up to it because this is what I really feel. Let's start here. So self-publish, as defined, is to publish a book using the author's own resources. Very simple, very straightforward. However, whoops, I went the wrong way. It can be really scary. You're overwhelmed by the amount of information. You don't know what you don't know. You don't know who to trust, and you have no idea what's a good value. It's chaotic, it's crazy. So what I want to talk to everybody about is understanding the types of publishing. Because here's my belief. My business is to help people and teach them how to do this on their own, but I firmly believe there is no wrong way. The right way is the way that you feel most comfortable with and the path that you're willing to take. So I thought the smartest thing to do is to go back through the 3 different ways that people can actually publish so they kind of understand the pros and the challenges and what they have to go through. So the first one is traditional publishing, and we're all familiar with that, right? Everybody understands, and these are the big 5. And if you look closely, you'll see something kind of interesting. They kind of swallow each other up, right? Penguin, Random House. At one point, it was Penguin and it was Random House, and now it's Penguin, Random House, right? So these are the big 5 ones. There are many more. there's medium and there's small publishers, but these are some that we're probably very much familiar with: Simon & Schuster, Macmillan. So, and believe it or not, these guys are swallowing up some of the smaller ones. There was actually, I remember Macmillan specifically, they swallowed up one called Pronoun. It was going to be this amazing self-publishing platform. I was super excited. I'd signed up for it. I was following it. And then I started reading news that Macmillan was kind of sniffing on them. And within months after me signing up, they bought them out and they crushed them. So we lost this, what would have been an amazing platform. Okay, so I'm keeping this simple here. These are the pros of traditional publishing. No money up front if you get picked up. You could get advances and royalties if it's the book that they're seeing and trending. You have a whole team with you of formatters and editors and proofreaders and cover artists and everybody that are expert, and they're going to polish up your manuscript. And they obviously have a wide distribution, right? Let me tell you, with the coming of self-publishing, getting this is harder and harder, okay? Here's the challenges. Look in the middle. 1 to 2% of unsolicited manuscripts are accepted by a traditional publisher. And for the bigger traditional publishers, you actually need a literary agent to even get into them. And I will tell you a story that a good friend of mine, very good writer, phenomenal, very, very perfectionist, and was constantly going over her book. And I said, when are you going to publish this? I've written 2, and you've got this one and you really need to do it. And so after I egged on her a little bit, she went and got a literary agent and gave him the book, and the agent was actually interested in her book. And it was over a year, and I don't even know if they'd heard from them thus far, but at the time I had talked to him, it had been over a year, they hadn't heard a thing. So one of the things you have to be prepared for in traditional publishing is lots and lots of rejection. That's not to put anybody down, that's not to discourage anybody, that is just a reality. Now, when you look at traditional publishing, that's the cream of the crop, right? When you start getting into the smaller publishers, I do know people that have gone with smaller traditional publishing, and they have been successful. And I have also heard people that have gotten in with the publishers that maybe medium or smaller, and they've had some really rough experiences. Maybe they didn't read the contract careful enough. They lost creative control. They lost intellectual property. They have struggled with the royalties. In average royalties, 5 to 15%. That's 15 on the really high end, right? They don't get to see necessarily the full business because everybody's doing all this for them, and they just come in and they're like, yes, no, that type of thing. And in some cases, they don't even get a yes or no. The editor's making the changes. This is what we're going with. So I've heard both. I have seen both sides of it, but it is very difficult to get there. And actually everybody probably knows the story of J.K. Rowling, right? I think it was 32 times that she got rejected. Now hers ended up being a success story. So it is not saying that cannot be done. If you are believing in it and you want to go that route, by all means, but make sure you know the company and make sure you have a lawyer that knows intellectual property and the contracts. Let's see. Whoops, this is going crazy today. Come on. So, traditional publishing. This is really good for people that do not want to deal with the business side of it. They don't want to front cost. They're willing to wait an extended amount of time. They can handle a lot of rejection, and they don't mind making a small percentage off of each book. They don't have an issue with giving up their intellectual property rights, and they're okay with losing creative control over their work. It doesn't mean that that happens every time. I actually know somebody that was with a smaller publisher, very successful. And he was like, yeah, they brought me in for the cover. I got approval over everything. He said it was a really great experience. And I said, that is awesome. So it can be there, but I guarantee you, if you got into the bigger ones, you wouldn't get a contract unless you were given over some control. All right, any question on traditional publishing?
I have a question. One of the things that you said was losing creative control. Can you give us an example, like
Sure.
1 or 2 examples of what that would look like?
Book cover. So if you have a concept and idea for the book cover, and then you let's just say you came forward and had a manuscript and said, look, I've already have a concept for the book cover. They could accept it. They could say, oh, great, and then come up with something completely different and say, we think this works better. And if your contract, if it's negotiated that way, they can have the final say on it and cut you out of it.
Would they be able to change anything that you wrote? So let's say that you wrote
Oh,
your book
yes.
and you had certain things in there. Would they be able to change? Is that giving up creative control also?
That's, yeah, because you lose, because if you don't have intellectual property rights, then they can take over the creative control of that and they can rewrite it how they want to.
Okay.
So they can take your structure and then redo something else. There's been horror stories out there, stuff like that. Yeah, so you really, like, I would never ever walk into a traditional publishing unless I had an intellectual property lawyer reading over everything and explaining what it all meant, and then deciding, do I want to take that route or not? Because at the end of the day, it comes down to this. Do they think they can get their return on investment? If they think that they are going to hit it big with this book, they will probably negotiate more chance of negotiating. If they think it's going to be a New York Times bestseller, I am sure there's going to be some negotiation room in there. If they think that they're just going to get a modest to low return on it, you're probably not going to have as much negotiating power with them. So you just kind of have to keep that in mind. And again, like I said, large traditional publishing, medium traditional publishers, smaller ones, that you really have to talk with them and know these questions to ask them about intellectual property and how it works, and royalties and what they pay for and advances and etc. And remember too, people is like, oh yeah, I want an advance. I'm like, sure, you can have an advance. It will come off the back in your royalties. You're not going to get as much in your royalties. There, any way you look at any of these, you are paying the cost. It just looks different in each setting, and you have to understand that. And so some people are like, hey, I am totally happy getting $1 a book, and they do everything. Yeah, because they're doing all of it, and you're just out doing, going to get a little bit from the book sales. If you are comfortable with that, it is not wrong. What you don't want to do is get into a scenario that you're not comfortable with, and then it's just way stressful. There's one scenario where nobody needs to be in, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So that's traditional publishing. Next one is good old hybrid publishing. So the good part of hybrid publishing is that you have a little more control than traditional publishing. A lot of times in hybrid, you will actually have creative control and input. You do not need a literary agent for hybrid publishing. You have access to the teams, right? So they would have an editor, cover artist. They should have some or part of that team will be there. A lot of them might subcontract out. They have distribution platforms, much like traditional publishing, which obviously they're the ones that are doing all that wide distributing. They will have some also. A lot of times you get to keep your intellectual property rights in hybrid publishing, and they could pay out a higher royalty than traditional publishers. And you notice I'm using the words often or may or possible because there's so many different ones. You cannot blanket it at all, right? Everyone's going to be a little different. You may be involved with a little more of the process, or they may take the manuscript and whip it around their back and then come back with a product too. Everybody's a little different. The difference with the hybrid is you often pay an upfront fee first, and then a lot of times they'll also take royalties, or they may upcharge. So I'll show you that in the challenges here. So in the challenges, there's a lot of variance. This right here, and I want to show you right here, this is where the scam artists live within hybrid publishing. This is where you hear the term vanity publishers. I have heard nightmares. There's actually, I read one on a forum that somebody was taken for $60,000. I have no idea how they missed the 40,000 red flags before they got to 60,000, but they got there. So the problem that I see is when people get caught and they get caught up with the vanity publishers, they prey on people that want their name on a book at any cost. And when you let your ego get too far ahead of you, that's what will end up happening. There is a lot of humbleness that comes with writing, because when you are now giving your work over to somebody to edit, to proofread, the cover, when somebody's doing that, you have to hear them. These are experts, and you have to hear what they're saying, and you got to determine what you're willing to accept and what you're willing to not. And it's not easy. You have to definitely have some big shoulders when you start getting into the editing, and when they're going to beta read your book. Anybody giving any input, it's rough, because that is part of you. Whether you wrote it for fiction or a resource, that is hours that you spent. So it's really hard to hear that feedback. Process, another challenge, process is not always completely transparent. Whew, that one's a hard one. I've seen it where in the hybrid publishing, they pay something up front and they are working with the editor that they have, they're working with people. But a lot of times they'll have a front person and they'll take that manuscript and they're like, we'll give it to our team back here. And then they'll come back with a product. And hopefully it's a product that you find acceptable. As you can see over here, I put the word quality concern. So I will tell you a horror story that I ran into. It was a person that I met, wrote a book. He's out there trying to get it published. Try to get it promoted. And actually in a similar area, he's in the same local area. So we meet, we talk, gives me a copy of his book. I read the book. Well, I put the book aside. I get ready to fly home and I'm like, I'm going to read the book on the way home. I was really interested in it. And I read 2 pages and I was just beside myself. The person had an amazing story and you couldn't read it. And so I went back to him and I'd found out he had used this hybrid publishing. And I didn't really know what to say at first. I gave it to 4 different people and I said, read this, didn't say a word. And they all just kind of were like, oh, and they read a couple pages and kind of nodded their head and handed it back to me. I'm like, did you find it readable? And they just looked at me. I'm like, I need your honest opinion. They said, no, couldn't read it. It was really confusing and just didn't make sense. And I went, okay. So I took a deep breath and I felt like we owed this person that honesty. Not in the program, not doing anything. He was not hiring me. I just was reading it as a friend. Brought him to the table. I said, listen, I think you have an amazing story. I don't think this is readable, and here's why. And I asked him, had this book been edited? And according to him, he said it went through 4 passes. I received it back 4 times. I go, did you ever talk to the editor? No, I went through a case manager of sorts, the person that kept the process going. And I went, this book is not edited. And he's like, how do you know that? I said, well, there is a difference between using possessive and plurals. And when you don't know where to use them, that's not an edited book. I said, and that's not just the only mistake I saw. There was structure issues, timeline issues, repetitive use, inappropriate word use. And I was like, whew, the person was not naturally a strong writer. The person I also know had some processing issues that I know would probably limit him. And nobody in that team told him there was an issue. And they put a great book cover on it. It really was a really good book cover. And they let him publish it. Not only did they go ahead and do that, they also took royalties. They paid an upfront, they took royalties, and then I found out they upcharged author copies. And I looked at him, I said, if you knew how they do author copies, you're gonna fall over. I said, it's 2 clicks and a credit card. And he just looked at me and I'm like, can you get out of this? He goes, I'm in a 2-year exclusive contract with them. Yeah, I know why it's 2 years, because after 2 years, the book sales kind of start dying off. That's like your prime time to sell books. So in that world of hybrid, this is where it's extremely scary for people. You don't know who to trust. You do not know what a good price is. You do not know how the process goes. You're trusting them to know what to do. And then they do something like that and take advantage of them. And he actually went back and said something to the company. And they're like, oh, well, if you don't like it, we can redo it for like whatever it was. And I was like, oh. And the sad part of all of it is that to get a lawyer involved, I don't know if it would do anything more than probably financially crush him. He had over $3,000 sunk into it, and he had another $3,500 sunk into the audiobook. And I can't even imagine what the audiobook sounds like. And I said, did the audio person maybe say anything to you? Nope. And I will add, just so you guys understand how Amazon World works, there's about 26 5-star reviews on this book. All his buddies. Oh, and Lisa, in honor, this is tea. I'm a big tea fan. So you really got to be careful in that world. You really have to know what you're asking. You have to know the nuances. Marketing is limited to none. A lot of them, they will put it out on maybe their distribution list. They have some. And believe it or not, in traditional publishing, everybody's like, oh, they do the marketing for you. I'm like, yeah, they're going to do as much marketing as they think they'll get a little bit of return on investment. You're not Brene Brown. You're not Stephen King. You're not J.K. Rowling. They're not going to do big marketing plans. And actually, my editor in the UK actually told me that she is seeing that the big authors in the UK are doing more and more of their own self-promotion also. The world is getting harder in the writing world. And if you think it's hard now we got AI coming out. And that just terrifies me because I use ChatGPT for things like find me this so I can go back and look at it quicker or summarize this morning, but I will never in a million years use it for my writing. Never. So that's going to be a whole other ballgame because I know right now there is somebody that is bored that is typing to ChatGPT, hey, write me a story about whatever they found trending, and they're going to go try to publish it. And it's happening right now. All right, so hybrid is best for not really interested in learning the full-blown business side of it, but and you want someone else to handle all the details, but you want a little bit more control. You're not wanting to upfront the full cost of publishing, but you're willing to upfront some of it. You don't want to wait for years to have your book published like traditional publishing. You're not willing to give up royalties or higher royalties to places like a traditional publishing, because some of these will take royalties off you. You're willing to potentially give up final say of your product, because that can happen, is that you can have that input and they'll be like, oh, thanks. And then your book comes out and you're like, what's that? I didn't want that cover. Well, we have final say over that. And that you're savvy at asking detailed questions up front to determine the full cost, right? So you're not only like doing the upfront, you're like, how much royalties are you going to take off? What does that look like? Do you upcharge for anything? Many of these places upcharge for an ISBN number. Many of them will upcharge for copyright, Library of Congress, or what's the other one? Oh, that was the ISBN number. So you will see that happen quite a bit. Okay, so self-publishing, the world I like, very overwhelming, but these are a lot of pros. And you can see right in the middle, you are in the driver's seat. This is all your world. You are in control. There are no upcharge fees. You're paying for it on the front yourself. You are creating your own team. You find your editor. You find your proofreader, if it's not including with editing, because sometimes it is. You find your cover artist. You work with them, or graphic designer. If you're lucky, maybe they are formatting. If not, you find a formatter. You do all of it. You do a marketing launch. You figure out where to go to get a press release written. You figure out your target audience. You write it all up. You write all of that. You get your press releases out. You spend lots of time watching some mindless TV while you're sitting there doing research. I've done it many, many times. You are fully in control. You have the flexibility to try out various formats. Maybe you're like, I want to do just an ebook for this one. That's fine. Just do the ebook. Or I want to do an ebook and a paper. Or, I'm going to add audio to that. My first book is an ebook, an audiobook, and it's in paperback. And there's a reason why it's audiobook, is because at that time, my best friend's daughter was actually a college student at the Austin Art Institute, and had access to a complete professional level editing services for audio. She was going to be an audio engineer. My best friend had been a DJ, had an amazing voice, and they, out of the goodness of their heart, said, we'll do your book. And my niece got it as a college credit. She got it as a project that got graded. And she also said she'll never, ever do an audiobook again. I ruined her. She was a lot of work, she said. So, but my second book does not have the audio part, because in my mind, if I was doing it, I'd want multiple voices on it because of the way it's written. So I've opted right now not to do it until I figure out if I want to kind of go that route. So you have control of that, how you want to do it. Fast publishing process, you're in the driver's seat. You're intimately involved with the whole process. You are talking to the editor, you're talking to the graphic designer, you're talking to the formatter, you're talking to everybody. You are doing marketing, whole 9 yards, okay? Profit margins up to 70%. Why isn't it higher? Well, because believe it or not, no matter where you go publish, they're going to take fees off you. So for instance, my ebook is actually done through Draft to Digital. They don't charge me to upload it, but they take 10% off every time a book is sold. So somebody's taking something somewhere, okay? If you do it on Amazon, same thing. Ingram Spark, same thing. Everybody's taking a cut out of it. It's super frustrating because you're the one that did all the work and they're the ones that are giving you platforms and taking the fees off it. But that is the way it goes here, unfortunately. So, but 70% is way better than 5%. That's my book. And you got to remember too, whether you're getting the 5% from traditional publishing or 70% from your self-publishing, you got to market yourself. That still costs money. It's still going to cost you. So I would rather take it out of my 70% profit margin than my 5% personally. You keep intellectual property rights, you creative control, all yours. Anytime you go into anything working with a cover artist, you make sure that those intellectual, you have creative control, and then you get intellectual property rights, or you get graphic property rights over it. That is yours to use freely and fully, and they do not have any control over that. All right, so challenges, because it's not all roses. As much as I would love it to be, you have to pay up front. The best I can say is that my editor is nice and lets me pay it. Usually I pay half up front and then half at the end of it. Or you can sometimes, like my editor would probably let me play in installments if I wanted to, but we usually do half and half. You're responsible for all of it. And that can be very stressful, right? You have to manage all of it. And the way it goes is hurry and wait. And so when you're like, hey, I got the manuscript to the editor, you should immediately be thinking, do I have my cover? What do I want for my cover? You know, and you should be already working on that. Sometimes people work the cover before they finish the manuscript. It's not always linear as we'd like it to be. No professional guidance. I'm on lots of forums. When I was actually starting my business and we were in this brainstorming phase, I would send these stories to my team, and I'd be like, oh my goodness. And it would be a forum of self-publishers helping other self-publishers. And that's well and good, and people have done really good. But sometimes it's the blind leading the blind, and there is some scary advice that comes out of there. I actually got into, I usually don't comment on those forums. I just read for education. But there was a gentleman that was, and he was making some moves and some waves, and he was telling people, you can publish a book for $75. You can do it, no problem. And he is just singing this to the high heavens. And so I just nicely put in there, you know, it really is dependent on what services you have available. And I just kind of was like trying to knock that edge off, saying, please don't run people down this road. Anyways, we got in a private conversation, and after a couple discussions, he finally admitted his wife is an editor. But his defense to me was, well, my wife doesn't do my editing, doesn't edit my stuff full time. Of which I replied, no editor does anybody's book full time. That's not how it works. So there, again, he's gonna scam people. And then when I read up on his stuff, what he does, he's not a writer for the purity of writing. He's a dude, he's a retired cop. He fell into a unicorn, wrote this thing on retiring as a police officer, and told me he wrote it drunk. So I'm sure it's super high quality, and got it out there, and he made apparently thousands of dollars. This is a total unicorn, right? And I said, well, that's great. You're a unicorn. And he goes, well, you need to read my guidebook. I said, no problem. He's like, I'm giving it away free because I'm benevolent. And I'm like, okay. So I did. I downloaded the 44 page. I got through the first 12, and I couldn't read anymore. The guy's goal is to just make money off of writing. And so what he's going to do is he's now trending whatever is popular, and he's going to start writing about it. And at the time, this was probably a year or so ago, that he found the trend was male erotica. And so he was going to start writing male erotica. And this is a guy that's out there hardcore giving advice to people. And I was like, bless it. Okay. You know, and I just backed off. I was like, I'm not tangling with that. If people need to run down that road, this is where your ego will get the best of you. People are going to tell you, oh, you can do it so cheap. Are there inexpensive ways to do it? Yes, I've done them. If you look at my first 2 books in the beginning, one is a book cover done through Fiverr, and one's a custom done through a graphic designer. Pretty sure you can tell which is which, because one of those book covers is getting redone. It's because that's what I felt I could afford at the time. And I did. I was $60, and that stock that I fought with her on to make it custom. And it didn't go so well. So it's okay though, right? We learn. There are less expensive ways to doing stuff, but in the middle, it says right there, the quality of your book is directly related to the author's standards. If you do not hold yourself to a high standard and want the best quality, you're not going to put it out there as a high quality book. It just isn't going to be. And when you have people reading this, they're going to pick it up, they're going to read it, and they may just put it back down, not recommend it to anybody else. So where did we go from there, right? You lost your best marketers, the customer that bought the book. Word of mouth is always the best. When that starts going wildfire, you don't need to do anything. It's free marketing, right? So you want the best. And unfortunately, it does cost money. That really is bottom line, right? Distribution is dependent on knowledge. And the reason why I said that is because you got to learn marketing. You've got to learn that a press release is a good thing. I did a press release. Did a lot of people pick it up? Nope, a lot. But Seguin magazine picked it up and they did an entire spread on me. I was like, hey, and guess what? I have a potential customer from that. And the lady doesn't even live in the state. Her family did. She happened to be here. The magazine was on the table. She read it. She's like, oh my God, my father-in-law wants to do a book, and boom, the next thing you know, she's calling me. One is one, I'll take it, right? So you really got to know how to use multiple platforms, and you've got to know how to launch. It's a lot of work, and you got to get your friends in there to help you. And I have a marketer that helps you to do storytelling, and I've done plenty of helping to launch things to go through that process. But you got to stay focused, and you got to be repetitive, and you got to not ever give up. You do it over and over, and you sound like you're in people's faces and you feel like it. And believe it or not, what you're doing is you're like, somebody's like, oh yeah, Donna's book, I wanted to buy that. And then the kids distract them and they go running off. And then like 3 days later, oh, I'm glad you put that up again. I want to get that book. I am that customer. Put it in my face every day. I'm like, oh, I'm glad they keep putting it up. I will remember one of these times to go buy that, right? The average, it's the rule of sevens. The average time somebody takes to buy a product is 7 times. That's average. I am probably 27 times. Why? Because I have the brain of a squirrel and I am like everywhere. And when do I remember? When I'm on my phone waiting for my kids to pick them up at school. That's when I stop and go, what are all the things that I forgot to do? And I'm doing it on my phone. So it's never too much. It really isn't. All right. So who are the best people for that? Right here. They want complete control of the process. If you are a type A person, and I don't know anybody in the military that's like that. If you are a type A person and you want control and you can learn quickly, and you want to maximize your book sales and profits, and you want that full creative and intellectual control, and you want to work with everybody and have full transparency, and you still want to deal with the over and over rejection and the long wait times, this is your place. You're willing to take the hose full face. And I will tell you, everybody that's been in the military, that's been dunked in at that deep end of the tar pit, as I call it, because I've been dunked in there many, many times, you can do this. Because it's just a whole other realm of it. It's just something you don't know. I think everybody can go in their military career and go, what have I done that I've never done before? And then I had to do it. Yeah, I did it, right? Everybody's done it. And then we're like, oh crap, we're learning quickly and we're doing it. It's no different. Okay. So everybody has that ability. It's just, do you want to do it? So this is my business that is in a soft launch right now. It's actually officially launching in 1 October. And so when you go to my website, you will not see it because it's all in the background being worked on. But if you look at all this, these are my little badges here. So as you complete different steps, you get a badge. And then when it's all done, you get the big logo, because it's just fun to do that. And it does motivate it. And I don't care what anybody says, everybody will look to see how their badge is. So there's lots of stops on here. And for people that not everybody will do every single stop. You will do most of them. If you've never done this before, you most likely will do all of it. But some people will say, hey, you know, Donna, I have a website already, and I'm doing a book for my business. So I just want to add on to my website. Sure, no problem. Other people will be like, you know, I decided I want to be an author and I want to market myself as an author. Okay, then let's do an author page for you, website type of thing. So the whole purpose of my business is to educate you, the author, how to run the show. I put you in the driver's seat. It's like driver's ed. I put you in the driver's seat and I sit next to you. And all I do is have a brake and a gas and a steering wheel also. And I help you navigate that. The whole goal is that when you are done, you now have a trusted team you can work with again. You don't actually have to use me as the coach, but I give you access to my whole team. And if my team can't help you, they will refer you. And now that's where the trust comes in. They are not going to refer you to anybody that sucks. They're going to refer you to their network. And that's what the whole big thing is getting into a network that you trust and that you want to work with. And if you decide like, hey, I like the accountability and I want to work with Donna too, sure, you can hire me on too. So I do function as the coach, but we do not make this opaque. It is all transparent. It is not me in the front and then all these people hidden behind me. We're all there. You get to work with everybody. So that's my business. But more of what I wanted to make sure you guys understood is that there are multiple ways to go. None of them are incorrect. Everyone is right except that vanity publisher that preys on the person that has so desperate to get their name on the book. They'll miss all those red flags because they know how to sweet talk them. So, having said that, we went the wrong way. Do you guys have any questions?
I do.
Mhm.
Hi, I'm Nicole,
Hello.
and you and I have a lot in common because I've been a nurse for 25 years, going on
Yay.
26 years, also a United States Air Force nurse.
Hey.
And you've probably worked with one of my friends because
Who?
if you just retired from Randolph, Colonel Lionel Lyde.
The name is familiar. I worked in a very niche job at AFPC.
Okay,
Brady. Yeah.
okay, yeah, he was there. He was actually the commander of
Assignments.
Randolph. Yeah, so.
Yeah, he was an assignment. Yeah, I worked in a little different area.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the questions I have, because I thought after doing my dissertation, I'd never write anything else again, but here I am learning.
I feel
Um,
you.
yeah. So, so one of my questions is that should you start off, especially as a nurse, should you start off writing small articles first before you jump into a book? Because I have book ideas, but um I didn't know, like, should I start writing small? I
So,
don't know.
you know what? It's so funny. So I was like you, right? I written in academia for years. I taught college and I, all I knew was APA format
Yeah.
and, all that academia stuff, right? And so when I had the opportunity to write, and I am telling you, it was very random, and I just jumped in. I hadn't been I was still full time in the military. I hadn't been writing anything. Um, it really depends on you and what you feel your dedication is. Books do not get written all at once at all.
Right.
They get written as they're inspired. They get both of my books. The only thing in common is they're nonfiction. One's a resource book, and it's about military transitioning out, and the other one is about my crazy family and how in the hell we survived COVID.
Right.
That's the only thing in common is that nonfiction part of it. I think that you have to reflect on yourself and figure out what type of person you are. And I personally think you kind of do both. And hear me out, is that you can just write, journal. You can journal for yourself. You could decide, I have a blog that I write once a week called Taking Off the Armor. I love writing that. It's my little aha moments of the week. And I knock that out once a week. It's my kind of release of what's been going on and that type of thing. My books came before that blog. But if you're writing a blog, depending on the type of book you're writing, you might want to write thoughts and just put them out there and see if your book starts to formulate. Some people are very formal. Some people want a formal outline, and that's not wrong, right? If it's a resource book, it's probably smart to kind of outline and see where things would go. But there's nothing wrong with both. There's nothing wrong with you writing thoughts, and then you're like, you know what, I can see how this book would look, and then just plug in and start doing an outline. You have to, the biggest thing is the creativity and getting it out of you and getting it moving. And I'm not kidding you that my phone has a little note section, and I will be talking to people and somebody will say something and I'm like, oh, yep. And I'll just write it down, and then boom, I'll write it in my blog and I'll do something like that. Matter of fact, in my first book, I was not kidding you, I was watching Tangled with my kids, and there was this whole scene where one of the henchmen guys that had the hook for a hand, and he was playing the piano, and you find out he wants to be a concert pianist.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I go running upstairs, and it was like, it fit right into a part of my book. My husband's like, what do you do? And I'm like, I just had this aha moment. It doesn't come linearly at all. It's just a hot mess that starts forming itself.
Right.
Like pottery, really. So I say do both, right? You just do what inspires you. If you feel like or just journal. Don't even put it anywhere. Just write a journal and keep it private. Write your thoughts. Things will start to formulate. And if you want to talk, find me, and I'll let you bounce stuff off me and give you thoughts.
Great. Are you on Instagram at all?
It's under the Transitioning Warrior right now.
Okay.
I'll have a second IG once we launch the Publishing Pathfinders, but I'm just have the IG. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I also too am teaching in academia right now as an adjunct instructor part-time. So like I said, there's things that come up. I talk about nursing things all the time, and nursing structure is about to change, and I'm like, okay, we need to start doing this, we need to start doing that, and I'm out to save the nursing world. So I'm thinking of like textbooks and things like that need to come down the line. So great idea. Thank you.
My editor in Puerto Rico actually is she's a self-help resource editor. That's what she specializes in. She's like a little Nazi. So the first thing she goes through is all the resources to make sure they're primary and they're proper and they're this. And I'm like, oh, you're like little academia there.
So does AI, because you mentioned AI, and we're actually, I'm doving more into this with my students, because now I have students that are writing papers on AI. So we're trying, we're looking at how do we curb that. What is the common problem, or what is the one problems that writers are worried about with AI coming out? Or AI?
They are very worried that they're going to take over, like it's just going to flood a whole other level. So with the coming of self-publishing, right, when that came at COVID really pushed self-publishing forward a whole bunch. And it's like the Wild West out there. I mean, it is bad. And that's the reason why this started, because my team and I are just like, oh my God, like they've got to have a standard. And so our little mission is to like raise the bar in self-publishing. And with the coming of AI, there's going to be those guys that are writing their book drunk, right? They're just going to get in there with drunk chat GBT and they're going to be like, write me a book on this. And I swear to God, they're going to copy that and they're going to give it to an editor, if that, and they're going to go, because I can tell you right now, they can say, write me this, they'll write it.
Yeah.
They can go into draft to digital, they'll flip it into a Mobi or an EPUB, and they can have that out. They could do that, I bet you, in 24 hours. Slap a cover on it, call it good. I'm not joking. It's scary. But the purest people that want to write, you will still be able to see them, you know. So yeah, it's scary. Anybody else?
You talked about the different forms that are out there for individuals that want to possibly like self-publish. Can you, provide a couple of those that, like different chats? I'm like you, I'd rather sit in a chat room or something and watch the, as I call it, the scuttlebutt go back and forth, and look and see what people are saying.
So the big ones are like Amazon KDP, right? That's a platform. Ingram Sparks is another platform, but there's a difference between the two of them. So Ingram Sparks, you cannot buy my book through Ingram Sparks, but Barnes and Nobles can, or the library can get it, or any of them, because it is a purely distribution platform. So Amazon can come over and buy my book and then sell it on Amazon. And that's what they're doing right now. And I'm honestly just experimenting with myself because my first book was done directly through Amazon. So here's the difference. My first book, the price hasn't changed in like forever years. My second book, you look on Amazon, the other day I was like, oh, it's not selling. It's down to $10 a copy. You should all buy it right now. Why? Because the price will drop to get people to buy the book, because they go over, buy it at wholesale, and then they go sell the book and they have control over the price. So it's when I go to a book event and I'll do something like sell my book for, like sometimes I do this with like nonprofits. I'll sell it for $25 a book. And then they get my signature, they get a bookmark, and I give some proceeds back to the nonprofit. And I have to tell people, because I would be the person to do this. If you go look on Amazon, you're going to see a whole different price, and this is why. Just let you know, I'm not trying to scam a system. This is what's going on. If I actually put it on Amazon platform directly, then I could control that price and lock it in wherever I wanted it to be. So that's like a whole other ball of education.
Right. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's smaller ones, Lulu, Smashwords, Book Baby. So.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm sorry. I'm going to keep talking here, and I don't mean to butt in. Anybody else, please chime in. But I have to ask your background besides nursing. So were you like an English major or?
No, but I think I was an editor in a previous life. It's like weird, but I am not an editor, and I respect all my editor friends because I do not want to be an editor, but I have a weird knack for language. So I was a nurse, and then I did teach college for a little while. So I did that too. So yeah. So I have a little variety there.
Right.
Is there anybody else?
Well, I have something. It's not I guess it's not a question, but I know we talked back in January about my my situation with my job and my kids, writing a book about my kids and things like that. And you said that your business is in October, right? Is it open in October? Are you starting?
Well, we're soft launch, so I'm working with, but I hard launch, meaning I put it all the way out there in October. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I'm still going through my process of getting out on my medical discharge. So hopefully by then I'll be done working with the military,
Yeah.
and I'll be able to
So I read yours, like you kind of did what I did. Like you put the stories up on Facebook. You kind of always tell stories about your kids, right? And so I see all the time. I kind of giggle because I'm like, oh, I remember those days. But I would find a place to capture them. So you can hashtag a name, and so you can find them all in one location, or you can do something where you can capture all of them, because I had to go back through 86 days and copy and paste and reformat them, and it's okay, it's not a problem.
Yeah, I try to remember to put their names on a hashtag, so
Yeah.
I can go back and look at them, because then I laugh at them myself all the time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's a great memory, right? And so you're just gonna have to figure out how you want to do it. I had to make two choices. Do I want to weave a story, or do I want to do it as a journal? I did it as a journal entry because that's what was going on. So I did it that way. So you might want to weave a story, and then it has to be written differently. So no big deal.
Okay.
But just find a place to capture it. Yeah, keep hashtagging them on there, because I tell you, it was a huge pain to go back through.
Okay.
Because I didn't do that.
Yeah, I need to go back through and check on some, because I know I had some funny ones. I didn't see them pop up. I was like, I need to go find those.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, well, yeah, it's what I want to do. So yeah, I'll be in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll talk through it, because I see a lot of different angles for you that come in my head. So we'll talk through it.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I really
So do you
appreciate your
norm
knowledge
do
with
you
all of
norm
this.
oh,
Oh,
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Just a minute, Nicole. Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, I really appreciate you coming on with this today, because I've been thinking about writing a book for a long time. And much
Okay.
like Montoya was saying about her children and everything, my family is a cross between, like, I'm gonna date myself, which is okay, Green Acres and Welcome Back Kotter. Like, we have that whole entire mess going on. My
Nice.
husband decided in his mid-40s he wanted to be a farmer. What the hell? So we have all this, like, I have this Facebook page called Tales from the Farm,
Yeah.
and I'm like a comic by nature, because you got to find humor in something everywhere. So I
Exactly.
got this man trying to figure out how to breed rabbits, take care of goats, have all his ducks in a row, literally. And yeah, and then meanwhile, I'm trekking up the turnpike to teach full time to fourth grade students who don't necessarily want to be, taught.
Hot, right?
Like, we have this whole thing going on all day. But I like what you said about, putting it somewhere, because I have all these different things going on at all times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to figure
It,
out where to collect all that. So yeah, Tales from the Farm. I guess I started out pretty good, but
do you
I have
know that I named
weird
my book the day they named my thing Pandemic Parodies? The day I started writing on Facebook, I called it Pandemic Parodies, and the name stuck. So you just never know.
that might be it. It might be Tales from the Farm, because you never know
Yeah,
what you're gonna get out of that.
absolutely.
Never know.
Nicole, do you have another question?
Just gonna ask about your like software use. Do you basically just use a Word program and then
Yeah.
or is there a special editing software out there?
So you see people like get scribed, and then they get these fancy things. I am a country girly, so just so you know, I was raised on a farm. But yeah. So I am most editors, believe it or not, they want a Word document. I prefer to write on Google Docs
Mhm.
myself, and if you can download it to a Word, then you could do that. I just do that because it just saves constantly, and if something happened, I know it's there. But honestly, Word document, that's really the easiest thing. Yeah. And from there, it goes through formatting and all that. But the editors need to, do all their writing on it. And yeah, so Word, I don't get fancy at all. And both of my editors, like, God, just a Word document, please. Okay.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Anything else?
Do you guys have any other questions for Donna tonight?
Yes, real quick, I do. This is Dale. I know Miss Letitia from being her first sergeant when we were in Iraq together. So that was unique. Not actually Iraq, it was Korea is where we were together.
Yes, and you
But
were sergeant major at the time.
I was. um, I've got several manuscripts. I've actually attempted to publish one, and unfortunately, the place took my money and then went out of business. And they ended up
Yeah.
having a lawsuit against them again within the state they're in. I'm not going to mention their names,
Yeah.
but I've got some manuscripts, and my concern for me is when I start reading them, they will probably get longer than they are now because one of them I wrote back in 2005, and I just kind of put it away. It's kind of been on the
Yeah.
shelf,
Yeah.
and I'm just I want to try to get it out. Anything I write about is going to be about God. I don't know anything else to write about.
Okay.
So, and I know that that's a particular, niche of people that you're going to try to reach with the book written about Christianity. But none of my manuscripts have been edited. I've never really went anywhere with it, but I want to go somewhere with it. And self-publishing is probably the direction I'm thinking of going now because of my past experiences. And I don't want to spend a lot of money up front. I did look at Trinity Publishing at one point, and again, they're probably the people that would reach the audience I'm looking for the best. But at the same time, I want to take the requisite time to get the book together and attempt to publish it by myself, which I think I'm capable of doing.
So,
So I missed about half. I missed about half of the presentation, unfortunately. I'm glad Letitia hit me up on Messenger and said, "Hey, you're missing it." So, but yeah, I mean, I guess you're.
well, I'll tell you this. So,
is there any other advice you can give me? I mean, I know that you can give me advice offline, which is fine, and I'll probably be doing that.
yeah. So it's so funny you said that because I was just at a networking mixer the other day, and I am not kidding you. I was sitting with a lady who was in a class that I had been teaching for veteran, not for publishing. And she was talking to a buddy of hers she hadn't seen in years. And he goes, "I'll be right back. I have something for you." And he brings her back a book that he published. And I'm pretty sure the book was through Trinity Publishing. And so what I think the best thing, we can definitely talk. It would be interesting. Here's the things I suggest. Number one, the one that you want to publish, if you haven't read it, go through and read it. Don't add or anything. You can put notes on what you think need to be done here and there, but go through and read it. Fix your typos. Do the big first read. You need to. Like, you should never ever go to an editor unless you've gone through it draft yourself. And I even encourage people to hand it to a trusted person and have them read it and give feedback. That's very hard to do sometimes because people just don't want to hurt people's feelings. But if you know somebody that's a good beta reader and that would give honest feedback, I suggest that. 3, I suggest if I can get a hold of this gentleman, he was super nice. But if I can get a hold of the lady that was talking to him, I would happily connect you guys so you can hear his experience. Because I think in all fairness, you need to look at all options and see if that's an option for you. 4, unfortunately, you can't put self-publishing and cheap together. It's just not. I mean, I'll be transparent. My first book, just the editing, was $3,000. That was just because there was 2 writers on it. My second book was $1,500, just the editing. Okay. So, and then my cover on my second book was $400. And that was modest price for that. I already had a website, so I didn't need to do anything there. And then there's my marketing costs that I have to go through and do the marketing and all that. So, and I was lucky that my editor was kind and says, "I'll help you format it." That's not common. That does not normally happen. I can assure you of that, because that in itself is a pricey endeavor. Because if you've ever done formatting, I've done it once. I wanted to shoot myself. It is long, tedious, mind numbing, and you could screw it up more if you don't know what you're doing, because I almost did. So, but it doesn't have to cost you $10,000-$20,000 either. There are ways to do this. You just have to, I have to know a lot more about it to be able to advise better. But I do think that if Trinity, I'm pretty sure that's who he published it, because I happen to look. When I grab books, that's the first thing I do is look to see who published it. And I asked him, did you self-publish? He goes, no, I went through the publisher, and I'm 98% sure he said Trinity. So that will be something there for do. But before any of that, read that book. Read it, go through it. You haven't had your eyes on it since 2005, great time to do it. Really good time to do that. And then I encourage a beta reader on top of that. A lot of times, like I have a book that we're running through right now, and the person that had it, not only has she read it probably way too many times, but she gave it to at least 3 or 4 friends that happen to also be writers, and they gave her some constructive feedback on it too. So.
All right, thank you very much. I'll do that.
Okay. All right, I'm being told I have to stop because she's being mean over here, sending me nasty notes. I'm kidding.
I sent you guys a message to let you know that he would be the last question. I have to close it out just to be respectful for time. This will be available for replay. For everyone who is watching the replay on our YouTube, we thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, you can actually reach out to Donna at her website. Now, her publishing, the publishing slide that she showed where you go through the self-publishing is not up, but you can still contact her. And that contact information is www.R.E.B.el-LLC.com. We will also make sure that we put that on the screen for you. I think it is on the screen. So we have that. And then if you have any questions or you want to contact or talk, you can't contact her directly and you want to contact her through Combat Boots to Red Bottoms, go to www.combatboots2redbottoms.com. Today we talked about self-publishing, and remember, you can join us every month. We have on the 4th Sunday, we have a business topic that we present to you. You do not need to be a member of Combat Boots to Red Bottoms. You do not need to be in the military or have served in the military to attend. The only thing you have to do is register. So you will get the link to where you can log in to attend. And we always have live Q&A. So although we have to stop now, the questions will still go on. You guys just won't hear it because you are not here. I'm Letitia, the founder of Combat Boots to Red Bottoms. Thank you again for joining us.